wasn't as bad as I expected. We used to have a 3, 4, 5 minute countdown, and you'd get more and more worked up as you kind of went along, and it reached closer to 0, but 30 seconds works for us. Welcome to PO Live. Welcome to our very first PO Live of 2024. We're so glad you joined us. If you are one of our official supporters, you're so welcome. If you are not yet, perhaps one of our supporters, you're really, really welcome as well. This is going to be the first month, or the only month actually, that we're going to make this open to absolutely everyone. So you're welcome no matter where you're coming from. Let us know in the chat there on YouTube, if you can hear us and see us, because that's always useful information for us. Let us know where you are as well. Let us know where you're coming from. And feel free to use that throughout the rest of the show as well. It does go quite quickly. We will get to things as we can, but don't be offended if it takes us a few minutes. I'm Ruth, as I'm sure most of you know, from Photography Online, hosting the show here, trying my very best to keep this lot in some sort of order. We have got James. Where's James? James over to the right. Hey, James.
Good evening, Ruth. Happy 2024.
I thought you were going to say happy 21st, and I was like, yeah, thanks.
No. We can multiply that by 2.
Yeah, all right, shut up. Down below, we have got Harry. Harry's down in the basement somewhere. Ahoy. Down there. Can you see us, Harry? Bang a broom on the ceiling if we get too loud up here. So Harry's here as well. And Nick, of course, down in the other basement room. There he is. He's down there. And of course, Marcus.
I'm the only one who gets to stand next to you in real life. What did I do to deserve that?
Lost some sort of a bet, I'm sure. It always works. If we have too many people, it just gets too confusing. So yeah, we decided to do 2 for 1. I'm seeing people pouring into the chat here. It is so good to see you guys. Ohio, someone's over in Ohio. Manchester, come on. From Manchester, and wet and windy Slough, so it doesn't get
Germany and Spain there. So
Germany and Spain, Canada, Lake Erie, Lake Erie in Canada, and of course some people from Scotland as well. I should say, if you hear any sort of strange noises, it could be these two down below, but odds are it's very, very wild tonight where we are in the northwest of Scotland. We've got very, very windy conditions going on outside. So if you hear some sort of whooshing noise, could be all Marcus's broccoli, but odds are it's probably just a lot of.
Or if one of the cameras suddenly gets blown off, it's good wind outside.
It's the wind outside, not the wind inside. Anyway, you're very welcome. If you've never joined us before for a live show, we usually run for around about. We keep it loose, but up to 90 minutes, usually an hour and a half. As I said before, feel free to use the chat. That's what these are all about, interacting with us and with each other as well. Feel free to chat in amongst there. We wouldn't take any offense if you do that. And we're basically splitting the show into 4 different parts. So first up, we'll be looking at what's come up on the previous Photography Online, going into a bit more detail on that, some behind the scenes stuff. Then we're going to be doing a feature called Story Behind the Image, which if you've ever had our magazine, which I was going to get a copy of, but I don't have it. We've had a feature in there for a while called Story Behind the Image. Basically, an image with a very interesting story. It's not much more complex than that.
Going forward, we want you guys to send us the image with the story behind it. So obviously, because this is the first show, we're going to be using one of our images just to give you an example of what we're looking for. But going forward for next month's show and beyond that, we'd rather feature your images and your stories. So if you want to come on and tell us about it on the camera, then that's great. But if you're a bit camera shy and you just want to type it, then we can relay the story on your behalf. But that's what we're looking for. So it's just to give you an idea, basically.
Absolutely. So that's the address down there, live@mc2photography.com. If you want to send anything in for submission, feel free to do that. We're also going to have a big news story of the month, a big item that's kind of hitting the photography headlines in the photography world. And tonight we're going to be looking, should I tell them? Or
no, keep it
we'll keep it a secret. A big news item, basically, of the past little while. And then finally, we're going to be doing a feature called Photo Detectives, which I've been looking forward to, kind of upskilling you, I think. There's a lot of talk about AI, all sorts of stuff going on in the photography world just now, and so we're going to be just honing our skills, I think, and just seeing how we can identify what's real, what isn't, and it's going to be a really, really interesting one. So very much looking forward to that. That is what is all coming up. We hope you enjoyed our first show of 2024, our first Photography Online, which it wasn't last week, James, was it? It was the week before. I'm forgetting.
Yeah, there's no point ever asking me about dates. It's actually 2 weeks ago, really.
Was it 2 weeks ago? Nick, you're good at dates.
It was 2 weeks ago.
It was a couple of weeks ago. So we
We've
hope
got
you
a new show.
enjoyed it. Yeah. Oh yeah. Sorry, Harry. We forgot to tell you. That stuff you were filming for, quite a while back. Yeah. We put it out.
I didn't even know we were filming.
Oh, yeah, the lipstick. That was just a behind the scenes thing. That was just a bit of fun. We had a good time with it, and obviously, one of the main things we're going to be doing throughout the show for the next 10 months is the Photography Online Challenge, and we're going to be doing the national parks. And you'll have seen the kind of intro to that, the beginning part of that. But main thing to say about that, Nick, is where were you basically? I'm going to bring up a couple of pictures here. Bear with me, by the way, because I'm doing buttons and I'm doing different things. So if things go pear-shaped, it's my fault, and I'll basically hand it to these guys. But yeah, Nick, you didn't feature. Will we see you?
No, unfortunately not. No, I was actually guiding a group of Swiss photographers at the time. Yeah, I think that was maybe planned by Marcus. I don't know.
No, well, Nick, I will say you were missed because you're the nicest smelling of these other two. But anyway, so I think there's another challenge in the offing anyway, isn't there, Marcus? Even in the thought processes, we think that far ahead, right? So
yeah, well, that's the other thing. I mean, this whole challenge, which will be spread over the next 7 shows. So we're going to do a day per show, basically. We filmed it in April last year. So we've had, 8 months?
Don't make me do that.
8 months to work on it, edit it and everything. But it's been really difficult not to mention it by accident somewhere. So we've obviously had to keep it a bit of a secret. So we're already working on next year's challenge now. And that's going to get even harder to try and not mention that, because it all gets a bit confusing as to what's this year and what's last year.
There was rumours of me having to do something.
Well, you've never done anything.
It didn't come from me. I set the challenges for them, and I heard something about me having to do something. So I'm hoping it's a rumor and not true, but you never know.
Yeah.
You never know. But yeah, we recorded it all in real time, which, people might think there's jiggery-pokery going on. You didn't really do it. These guys were actually together in a camper van.
Sadly.
For 7 days. And I remember, down there, and we got the camper van, and you guys were kind of looking at it and going, well, hang on, where's the third bed? Because you were pretty convinced there was 3. You were adamant you'd requested that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, obviously we're not as big time as we think, and we have to share. I had to share a bed with Harry. Hopefully that was the last time that'll happen.
Yeah, speaking of Harry, there was an interesting voice note sent to me a while back. It was taken from a microphone that, when we were doing some editing for the show. And care to tell us where that was recorded?
I don't know what you mean. What?
Let me say, it sounded like a tinkling noise.
Oh.
More like a plopping, actually.
Yeah. Well, when Marcus texted me saying, I've got a bit of audio here from when you left your microphone on, I suddenly got really worried I'd finally been caught, talking rubbish about the whole team. And it turns out it was just me going to the toilet. So it could have been way worse.
You weren't really that bothered.
I'm amazed I managed to somehow leave the whole microphone attached and on during proceedings. I think that's quite achievement.
I should explain that Harry had this 2-hour audio recording, because when you're recording for a week, you end up with hours and hours and hours of footage. But even more so, you end up with 5 times more audio than you do video, because you just leave the microphones running all the time. And it's just safer to do it that way than having to remember to turn them on and off. And Harry had forgotten that his mic was on. He'd gone off to the toilet, and I was here going through all the audio, hours and hours and hours of it. And there was a 2-hour clip where you can see the waveform, and nothing was happening. And there was just a tiny little bit of information. I thought, what is that? And it was the toilet door opening, and then Harry sort of going like this, and then lots of other. I mean, we would play it. In fact, we've got it here, haven't we, Ruth? Let's play it now. Just joking, Harry. Just joking.
I was panicked there.
Yeah.
Do we? Well, yeah. Stephen's saying Harry is one of the original POOS, and Ian, is that where the POOS idea came from? Sadly, not. But yeah, that would have been. It ties in well. It's natural. But yeah, the whole idea of the feature and the challenge, besides getting them together and seeing what happened, is to create a calendar. So 15 national parks. 12 months of the year. Marcus is convinced there's a way to do this. We've decided we've got 12 months, a cover and a back, but we're not entirely sure. Are we going to drop a park?
We'll go to a 13-month calendar, so we'll include January for the following year, because that's useful.
Smart. Okay, so that is actually going to become available for sale. We'll obviously let you know throughout the year when that is going to be ready. I've made a note. It's going to be ready September. Oh, I thought it's September 24th. No, September this year. That will be ready. That'll be. I need to get to work on that then.
Yeah, so you'll be able to pre-order the calendar probably, I don't know, whenever we make it available to pre-order. But we'll give you more information on that later on in the year.
So that was the National Parks Challenge. Something else that we were doing on forgetting already. This month's show is the cross-processing section. Mm-hmm. Tell us about that.
The cross-processing section. Well, Harry got the wrong end of the stick and thought it was cross-dressing.
Yeah, shall we watch this? We're going to disappear for a few seconds, but you'll enjoy this.
Just another day in the life of Harry Martin.
Am I pretty yet?
I've never had such an attractive date.
Well, that's true. I'm just trying to imagine how they do it in films.
They've normally got a better starting point in films, though. They don't normally have a hairy top lip.
There he is, Harry getting the wrong end of the stick. Was that your dress, Harry?
No.
Don't answer that.
Must have been my wife's, I swear.
Yeah.
But I think what we've come to realise, though, Harry, is that you need to change your mobile phone provider, because that's twice in the same episode now that you got the wrong end of the stick. On the challenge, you didn't hear Ruth saying that you needed bedding. And you misheard me saying cross-processing. So,
well, blame the bit. Why haven't I got a business phone? If that's the case.
Ooh, this seems to be something you're bringing up more and more often, Harry. Have you had a conversation? Have you actually had a conversation? He wants a phone, Marcus.
Clearly, he does. But he's not going to get
one. Speaking of the challenge, big thank you, obviously, to our sponsors. If I press the right button, that would be useful. No, not that one. Yes, that one. There we go. Accurist. Marcus of London.
Yep. So Accurist watches. We just want to show them a little bit of love because they made the challenge possible. Obviously, it's incredibly expensive as well as time consuming to go away for a week and film touring all around the UK. Accurist watches have basically given us the funding to do that. And if you're not already aware of who Accurist are, I think most people in the UK will be aware of them because they used to sponsor something called the Speaking Clock. So before the days of the internet and when everyone had a phone in their pocket, if you wanted to know what the time was in the UK, you used to pick up the old-fashioned landline phone, and you used to dial. Do you remember what the number was, James? Was it 1, 2, 3,
4, 5, 6? I think.
It might have just been 1, 2. I don't know, whatever it was. But anyway, it was a well-known number, and you used to phone it, and you'd hear a message saying, on the third stroke, the time sponsored by Accurist will be, and then whatever the time was.
Precisely. You missed the word precisely out there.
No, it was only precisely on the top of the minute. If it was, say 7, if it was 7:20 and 35 seconds.
Harry looks enthralled by this. Two old blokes talking about the speaking clock.
Well, speaking about Harry looking enthralled, when we showed this picture earlier, what did you say, Harry?
Who's that, Harry? Yeah.
No, I do know who they are.
I can only hope he's joking. I can only hope.
So Accurist, an iconic British brand, and as you can see from the photos, they've been worn by some very well-known people. So we've got, is that Princess Anne there?
It
James?
is, yeah.
Who's on the right?
That is Twiggy. So Twiggy used to be the
supermodel.
Wasn't Twiggy blonde?
Model.
Well, she might have been blonde at some point, but yeah, she was the Kate Moss of the day. Okay. So and then obviously the other two were McCartney and Lennon. Anyway, the message here is, if Accurist, they're a watchmaker, British watchmaker, but using Swiss movements, and go and have a look at their website. Their watches are incredibly affordable. If you're looking for a gift for a wife or whoever, then go and have a look on the website.
My birthday's coming up soon.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we might have a little bit of something as well, mightn't
Dismissed.
we?
Well, later on in the year, we will be giving away their flagship watch. But that, I believe, well, I don't know. I was going to say, I believe it's a men's watch, but you never know.
Can't be doing that.
It's 2024, Marcus. Anybody can wear anything.
That's true.
Clearly.
But yeah, head over to the website, to the Accurist website, and see if there's anything that takes your fancy. So if we support them, then they'll support us, and everybody benefits because you'll continue to see us doing things which we wouldn't otherwise be able to afford to do.
Yeah.
So.
Now, wonderful as the UK was, one of the features we had on the last show was Namibia, which was, I gotta say, a fabulous place. What the heck was that noise? I apologize if anybody heard that. Harry, tell us about it.
I mean, I'd heard a lot about Namibia, and I'd been wanting to visit for a heck of a long time. So it was one of those places I'd build up a lot of expectations in my head, and there's not many places that end up meeting or exceeding those expectations. But Namibia was one of those places. I loved every second of it. Already planning to get back there soon, and I mean, just as landscape photography goes, it's
so
up
tell us
there
about
with...
the light, Harry, because that's one of the key things, and the overall experience of being, well, you and I have been in Africa before together anyway, so, but Namibia especially, what's the feel you get? What did you take out of the experience, and particularly the light so striking in your pictures?
The nice thing is,
and that's the first time I've ever given you a compliment, ever. And the last.
It's nice and predictable, which is the great thing about the light. So not having to, when you go out here in Scotland, you've got to spend 50% of your brain processing power trying to calculate how likely it is, are we actually going to get light, what the conditions are going to do. Whereas in Namibia, you can plan knowing that you're going to get light striking particular subjects. And as long as you know where the sun's going to be at a particular time and how it's going to rise, etc., then you can plan shots like this that are on screen now relatively easily. And that's the really nice, enjoyable thing. It's a relatively sort of low stress photography, and it means you can concentrate wholly on what you're doing rather than sort of what's going to happen.
And what's the weather like in the sort of springtime, which I know is when when the trip's being planned for and when you were checking it out?
Relatively pleasant. I mean, we've been to Zimbabwe in September, October, and you remember, I mean, that's just bloody hot, really, really hot. Whereas April, May in Namibia, it's the end of their rainy season, and it's probably about mid-20s Celsius. That is, I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. 100.
No idea. You set us both all there. Neither of us know.
But no, pleasant. Cold in the mornings, but chuck a couple of extra layers on. But it's nice then not to be.
So it's a good place to work, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the last thing you want is to be walking around in 40 Celsius because you just can't think, you can't do anything. It's too hot to even just go out walking.
So Harry, I've got a question that's come in from Andrew Briggs, basically saying if you're walking around the desert bare feet, are you likely to come across any snakes?
The short answer is yes. So I did find I went to a campsite that isn't featuring on the itinerary I'm running. I was just somewhere I was staying, and I went around the back of the rocks to where they had the outside toilet area, dropped my breaks. And
Harry, that's the one-eyed trouser snake. That's not what he was referring to.
That's what I thought initially. But then this thing went slithering off into the rocks. So there are snakes about. For people that are going to end up coming with us out to Namibia.
The chances of seeing a snake in Namibia are almost anywhere in Africa are almost zero. So
you just keep your shoes on.
Yeah.
I mean, I walk around barefoot because if I get bit, it's my fault. But the sensible thing is just not to take your shoes off.
So, Harry, the thing that came across to me the most was that your sense of sort of freedom when you were out there. Do you have a favourite location that you went to? Because there's 2 or 3 featured, and I've seen the itinerary for the up and coming trip as well. But what stands out for you in terms of actual locations?
This place on screen now is
that light, by the way.
It's this old abandoned mining town. And I knew it was going to be quite interesting. And I'd already seen some of the really classic desert landscape areas, which I just loved. But this ended up being probably my favorite of my trip there. It was just like shooting some of the abandoned houses we have here in Scotland. But, you don't get wet and wet feet, wet and cold. And you can just wander around looking for, decrepit compositions in amongst the sand. It's a totally different experience, and I was really blown away by sort of the photographs you could make.
Well, the other thing that I was blown away by was your balloon ride. So, I mean, honestly, tell me about that, or tell everyone about that, because it looks incredible. It's something I've never done either, and would love to.
I've never been in a helicopter, never been in shooting in a plane or anything like that. So when I saw the opportunity to do something like that, there were actually options to either go on a helicopter ride or to go in a hot air balloon. And I opted for the hot air balloon just because I wanted something a little bit sort of calmer rather than sort of buzzing around in a helicopter, getting jolted around and having less time to line up compositions. And I've been very fortunate to do some very cool things and see some cool places in my life. But that hot air balloon ride, no exaggeration, is up there in the top 5 things I've ever done. I mean, it was just amazing seeing those landscapes from...
So is a hot air balloon as sort of slow and mellow as they appear to be? I know you get a blast of, when you, I don't know, they're pulling the thingy-me-bob.
Yeah, so, the odd blast of, sound and hot air. And that's it. The rest of the time, you're just sort of serenely floating along at just a sort of couple of knots, basically. And so you've got plenty of time, and you do it at sunrise. And so you're up in the sky before the sun is up, and you watch it cresting the horizon and starting to light up all of these desert landscapes. Not many words I can use to sum it up. And the best way is that bit of video we had in the feature.
Got a question here, Harry, for you from Ian. He said, did your gear take any hit from the sand? Because you did have a segment there where you were fighting against it when it was really, really windy.
Yeah, there was a couple of days. It was really unusual winds. I remember chatting to the hot air balloon guys about it, and it was a really unusual direction of wind for those locations. And I don't recall getting too much. I think I did have to clean my sensor at one point, but I was just sensible and kept things covered, didn't change lenses outside. I got more of a sandpapering than the equipment did.
Didn't take any of your beard off then? Didn't that get a nice exfoliation?
I think my skin's still smooth from that trip, yeah.
So what time of year are you actually, whenever it is, it's springtime, because of the weather?
Out Northern Hemisphere, springtime, so it's going to be the end of April into May, and that's when it'll be mid 20 Celsius, cool overnight.
And you're guaranteeing the light?
Well, I can never guarantee, but I mean, it's as close as you can get when you head to places like that.
Perfect. And I guess Ruth will tell us how we find out, or how people find out about it.
Yeah, I mean, if you want more information on Namibia, just hop onto the website, which is the usual address, mc2photography.com, or email us, contact@mc2photography.com. There's information up there. We can get even more information to you if you are interested in that. Going out there with Harry and James. Are you going out as well?
I believe so.
Oh, exciting times. So that is happening.
Harry company.
Just to keep Harry company. 2025, is that what we said? Yes, it is. That is happening. If you want to do something before 2025, and maybe you're not into hot temperatures, maybe more cool temperatures is your thing, you'll remember from the show that we launched our biggest ever prize worth over £2,000, which is basically a week-long photo holiday to here on the Isle of Skye in winter. Hopefully the conditions will be more like you can see on the screen and not like they are tonight.
That's been the conditions here for pretty much the last week.
That is true. We've had a stunning week, a massive dump of snow. It's been extraordinarily pretty. It blew away in one night. You weren't here, actually.
No,
but it blew away in one night, which is why we've got all the gales and stuff tonight. But anyway, the prize is fantastic. A week here in winter. And you can take up to 6 people, or it can be up to 6 people, 5 friends, family, whatever it is. And we will have a team member take you out for the day, doing some photography guidance, showing you all our favorite spots. You can also watch us do some filming if you want, of photography online. I think there's some food in there.
That's not mandatory, by the way.
That's not, you don't have to do that part. It's there as an option. The food, though, always a crowd pleaser. In fact, I mean, we've had hundreds of entrants, and I'm not sure if it's the food or if it's the prospect of Skye. Are
we talking about the Uig Hotel breakfast?
The Uig Hotel breakfast.
Well,
we'll take you out to breakfast, basically, as well. It's a really, really good prize. There's lots more information on it. If you go to the show, we talked about it quite a lot on the last show. I'm sure you've seen that. And you can enter through there as well. The question to win this prize was actually linked back to Namibia and to the feature we were asking how many balloons, how many partial balloons, how many bits of balloons you could see. So we have had, last I checked, hundreds of entrants. So
that's good.
we're going to have fun.
So there's people out there who can count.
There are, and some of them are right. Yeah,
Right, amazing.
Some of them are wrong. Someone, I think, possibly accidentally added a 0. So they saw hundreds of balloons.
Right, okay. And how long have people got before we close the competition?
Do you know, I can't recall offhand. It's about a week.
Okay.
It's about a week. But if you go to the link to enter, you don't have to enter again. If you go to the link to enter, scroll down to the bottom to the T's and C's, it'll tell you when the closing date for that is. So we will be drawing the winner on the next show, first Sunday of next month, which is coming up for 2 weeks?
2 weeks away today, yeah.
2 weeks. We better get on with that.
I know, yeah.
So you got a week to enter. We need to pick someone, do all that stuff. So yeah, watch next month to find it if you are the lucky winner for that. Anyway, where am I? ECS, Essential Camera Skills. It's one of those features that obviously we've done some new stuff this year, but we wanted to keep Essential Camera Skills because it's just so popular. And yeah, as Marcus was saying, these are based on Essential Camera Skills over the last 3 years. We've got a book per series. And I'm sure most of you have seen it, but it's skills, it's camera skills, essentially, from composition to how to shoot portraits to astro.
Basically, everything we know is in these volumes here.
Exactly. So they're well worth it. Skinny little pamphlets, lovingly made for your consumption. And they're available on the website, mc2photography.com. Have a look for the shop link on there, and you can get those. But anyway, so speaking of essential camera skills, we were doing, Nick, macro. Who's talking? James, you talk. Let me find the
You want me to talk?
I do, but let Nick talk, okay?
Yeah,
don't take over.
Nick's feature on macro was again something. We spoke about it about a year ago, didn't we, Nick? Actually, when we were talking about it, and you were staying down with me, and it was you two, you and Harry's feature was lovely. Yours was also equally delightful to watch, but I mean, a very different feature, really. It's not far flung, not far afield, in your very own apartment, I believe, is where you shot it. And you did your own setup, didn't you? With the tank at the right time of year, clearly, to get hold of the tadpoles, which are perfect perfect macro, subject matter, really, as much as anything. And I know, because we were chatting about how it went and things, what did you sort of discover from the tank setup? And how did you, if you did it again, how would you do it slightly differently? And in terms of lighting, how did you light it? All of those kinds of things. Setup, first of all, it'd be interesting to know about.
Yeah, well, the setup, originally I had it in a small room in the apartment. I don't know why, it's just where I started with, but then I soon realized that I didn't have enough space around the tank to place lights, place backgrounds and what have you. And to maneuver yourself as well, I guess. Yeah, indeed. So I moved into my front room, which also gave me more natural light as well. So the room I originally had it in had just a single light, a skylight window, but moving it into my lounge, I had 4 windows in there, so more natural light coming in. So I was able to keep my ISO down as well as using the lights. So you supplemented the natural ambient with artificial ambient as well. Yeah, and obviously we must thank gadgetbag.co.uk for allowing us to obviously use the lights that we did. Yep. So that was very helpful as well. Yeah, so I was able, I had more space in my lounge, able to position the lights more precisely. And how did you go about? Because one of the big things about using artificial ambient and the small lights, which I believe Marcus has one somewhere, I know that. So those little handheld lights. Because I know the next slide, actually, I believe, Ruth, one of the tadpole. So there is some artificial lights there. Sorry, so how did you combine that? That's the picture I was looking for there. There we go. So you've got a variance of light color there, basically, haven't you? So, the surface that the tadpoles are leaning up against, as it were. What's the technical name for that surface, Harry? You're the zoologist here.
I'm sorry, I was reading people's comments. What's the question?
Pay attention.
Up there. The surface of the water, what's that called, that the tadpole sticks his head in? The little golden layer there. We'll leave Harry to suffer with his zoology.
Meniscus. Thank
you very much. There you go. So that's golden. The color of the light underneath is blue, and that's by combining natural and artificial lights. Yep. So using the little panel light that Marcus showed there, you can change the color temperature, and also
blue, red, green, whatever you like. So they're RGB panel lights basically, so you can change the color of the light.
And I'm guessing that because you mentioned in the piece about the details of the tadpole and how that's what macro is all about, isn't it? Really seeing things that you wouldn't see and undiscovered. That the gold flecks on the tadpole, the beautiful gold flecks you can see, it works really well, doesn't it? With the tones of light and the color, temperature, and stuff.
Yeah, I mean that was absolutely amazing. Just seeing that, we putting the lights on and you see all these little gold specks. It was just like unbelievable. Yeah,
they're not black at all, right? They're not little black splotches. Yeah, it's stunning. And you talked about rails and things like that. Tell us a bit more about that. It's not something that many of us use a lot. I know that. So
this is this is a macro focusing rail. So people use it for various things. One of the main things that people use it for is for focus stacking. So for macro photography. So if a camera doesn't have the inbuilt focus stacking function, basically you put your camera on there and you basically turn this little dial here, and that moves your camera, your camera sensor backwards or forwards. So you basically continue to move it forward, take shot. But I used it to allow me to keep my tripod pretty much in the same position, but using this to to change my distance to the subject, to get within the minimum focusing distance of the lens, which I think is 26
So it's better than booting the tripod, with the, just kicking it forward a couple of inches.
Exactly. I mean, my tripod has spikes on it and I have wooden floors in the lounge, so the landlord wouldn't be very happy, very happy about me scraping the floors. So yeah, I mean that's a big help as well. I use it sometimes outdoors as well. If you can't get your tripod into the exact position, this is a great tool for that. And they're not that expensive.
It would work well on static objects as well, wouldn't it? As opposed to moving tadpoles. So how did you go about sort of focusing? What was because it's something I've always struggled with whenever I've done close-up stuff. So
I used the variety. So I did use the animal eye tracking. It's basically the subject tracking feature of my camera. It worked at times. I used manual focus as well. Several focusing, so continuous focusing on whatever brand camera you have. So that will just continually, focus on the moving subject. So I used a various, just to try and see which worked best, and none really worked better than the other. It was just depending on what was happening at that time, what focusing technique worked.
Because I'm guessing that magnification, because people often see on lenses it says it's 1:1, for example. So explain to us what that actually means in the real world, as it were. So what
right. So this lens here, this is the lens that I was using. It might get a 1:1 reproduction or a 1.4 times reproduction, so 140%. So we'll go to the 1:1. So say a 1 penny P is 10-15 millimeter across.
So I'm guessing actually, because that's a good example, isn't it? A coin like that, that's not far off the sort of size of a tadpole, right? So if it's 1:1 and the tadpole was sort of diagonally a 35 mil sensor, it's going to be roughly the same size, I'm guessing.
It says, so it'll reproduce the exact same size on your sensor. That's
wow. So therefore you can see those gold flecks and all that detail.
Exactly.
And I think that's the actual definition of macros. There's lots of lenses out there that say they've got a macro feature, but they're actually nowhere near a macro because it just means that it's half size or something like that. But to get a true macro reproduction, you're looking at a 1:1 ratio, aren't you?
Or greater.
Or greater.
So you've got the lens that you mentioned there, but there are other ways of doing it. We've got filters, extension tubes, and then the big boy lenses, the ones you were showing us there. What's your experience with filters? There's some filters there, and extension tubes. What do you feel about those? And
so the close-up filters, that's your cheapest option. So they work like spectacles, glasses, in terms of what they call the diopter. So they're like magnification. But yes, you're putting another piece of glass in front of your lens. So there'll be quality issues there. But they are, the cheapest option if you've got a limited budget, something like that. The extension tubes, they're the kind of the next best. I mean, they're the second best thing. So basically, they come in different sizes. You can see here, normally sort of
So 12, 25 and 30.
I think now, and I have got some actually notes on my screen here. 12, 20, 36 millimeters. So I think that's what these are here. And they basically increase they reduce the
distance between the back of the lens.
They either increase it or reduce it, one or the other.
They do, yeah. So I mean, they basically they don't have any glass in them as well. So they decrease the focusing distance of your lens basically, and you can stack them as well. So you can stack all those three together, and that will obviously reduce the distance between your sensor and how close you're able to focus on. So I'm making a bit of a meal of this. Yeah.
It's a hard thing to understand, but I've been so if these because they're quite a good option to get started with,
yes.
Extension tubes, but they come in not only different sizes, but they come in sort of different varieties as well, i.e. ones with electronics and one without, or a degree of electronics. So the ones that will help you with autofocus and ones that won't. What would be your recommendation? I'm guessing the answer is depending on your subject matter, actually. But
yeah. So if you're only doing still life, then you don't need the autofocus ones.
Perfect.
Obviously, if you're doing tadpoles again, whatever,
And you mentioned that the cheapest option was possibly the glass screw-on filters for the front. I believe that Marcus may even have a cheaper option still.
You know what I'm like with cheap things.
I do know what you're like with cheap things. Yeah.
So there's something called free lensing, which pretty much does what it says on the tin. Now, depending on your camera, you might have problems with this. But if you go into the menu and you find something that says something along the lines of release shutter without lens attached, you want to make sure that's enabled, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to take a photo.
Before you go ahead and do this, don't do it in the Namibian desert or outdoors if it's raining.
Correct. So obviously you have to take the lens off the camera. Now, I've already enabled this camera to fire without a lens attached. So that's going to take a photo even without a lens. But the extension tubes, what they basically do is they allow the lens to be positioned further from the camera than it would otherwise be. So if I put this lens back on, this is not a macro lens. This is just a standard 50mm lens. I've got a keyboard here. Now, if I try and take a picture of this with this lens, just in normal mode, bear in mind, this is not a macro lens. The closest I can get to, if I'm just going to put that on the closest, that's as close as I can get there, which is about, I don't know, 40 to 50 centimeters. So if I take that photo,
that's a very, very dodgy 40 or 50 centimeters, by the way.
Well, you know what my judgment of distance is like. Okay, so if we can bring that up on the screen there. Okay, so that is the biggest I can get this keyboard appearing on this camera. If I now take the lens off, okay, and this requires a little bit of practice because you're basically free holding two elements here. I can just extend the distance, and what I can do is I can put this lens almost touching the keyboard. I'm just going to rest it on the bench there, and then it's just a case of adjusting the distance between the camera and the lens until I see the picture come into focus. And if I just take another picture there, okay, got that. So if you bring that one up there, then you can see it. All of a sudden, I'm able to get so much closer to the keyboard just by detaching the lens and almost imagining that I've got extension tubes. All extension tubes do is they stop light and dust and other particulates going into the camera. But if you're working in an environment indoors like this, where and this was clean, this studio was clean not so long ago, was
clean.
It? So
if
it's
you
dust free.
If you could see the floor, I don't know what you were doing in here.
But anyway,
boxes flying.
It's certainly something that you can try, and it's a lot of fun. And also, getting a little bit more technical, you've also got lens movements, because you can move the lens like this and get some funky, depth of field.
Harry's not.
I know.
What was that
so
comment,
negative.
Harry?
Nothing. Carry on.
No, I'm giving up now. Right, so there you go. So that's a cheaper way to do macro.
It is. So, getting back to Nick's piece, where he was actually using proper equipment rather than free, lens detaching, freehanding, or using a toilet roll, which is what we used to do in the good old days, basically, put a toilet roll holder between the lens and the camera. What would be your summary, Nick? I mean, because you've tried filters, you've tried extension tubes, you've tried the big boy lenses. What would be your recommendation for somebody that wants to, delve into the world of close-ups?
I mean, yeah, I mean, it would be get yourself a lens.
But they're a bit of money, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can get second-hand ones, which are not, a couple £100.
They do actually, and it's not us doing a sales pitch here for that particular lens, but they do make quite a decent sort of portrait focal length as well, by the way. So
yeah. But yeah, I mean, extension tubes, if you are on a budget, they're not that expensive. You can get a set for £100, something like that.
So you would skip filters, go straight to extension tube.
Yeah. I mean, there's going to be a big loss in quality with the filters. So yeah.
But Nick, there was a quick question. So about losing light with the extension tubes, is it like using a normal teleconverter with 1.4 times, 2 times? How much light are you losing, and did that really affect the images?
Yeah, I don't know the exact amounts, but yeah, you will lose light. I can't remember the exact amount of stops. It probably is. Probably start from like one stop. You probably lose 1 to 2 stops depending on how many extension tubes you stack on top.
It's basically the inverse square law.
Mm-hmm.
It's true. It is true. So that's one of the features that we will do in future. Haven't even got it on the ideas board yet. Is the inverse square law, because
so when Marcus is talking about it, that's the time to get a pillow, get comfy.
No, but it's incredibly technical. But it's one of the most. It's not one of the most. It is the most useful law in all of photography, because it applies, it can be applied in so many different situations. And
when you're listening to Marcus explaining it to somebody who pretty much only speaks Spanish, as I was last week, it was quite entertaining.
Yeah, but I still managed to do it, so that's fine. But if you understand the inverse square law, it answers so many questions about photography and things, and you go, oh, that's why that happens, and that's why that happens, and it's just such a useful thing to know. So
where you don't need to worry too much about it, where macro is concerned, is that generally, if you start off, fairly with static subjects, then you'll find your way through it. You'll stumble through it without too many issues. Mm-hmm. Yes, quite right.
Nail on the head there, Romy.
Yeah, thanks, Romy.
All right. Well, listen, this was the last show. This was our last Photography Online show that we've been talking about. There obviously a new one coming up in a couple of weeks' time, but we're going to move on with our live show and come into a new feature, which I said before, we're calling Story Behind the Image, where, like we said, we're taking an image with an interesting story behind it. And this month, we're doing it one of ours. Going forward, as we said, if you missed us at the beginning, we want you to actually send an image into us if it's got a really interesting backstory. We'd love for you to get in touch, and just the usual address. They can, yeah. If you want to come on, you'd be very welcome to. If you're a bit nervous but your story's epic, then feel free to send it in and we'll read it out. The usual
do
address.
It Jack and Ori style. Get Harry sat in a rocking chair and he can read the story out.
Did he wear a hat or a shawl or anything? Did he just have a pipe?
Well, it wasn't one person; it was different people.
And Jack and Ori wasn't a rocking chair; that was Val Dunican. But anyway, for our older listeners.
Anyway, story behind the image. Yes. So this month we are looking at a story that is an image, rather. It's quite an old image.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Let me just bring up the first
it's a proper
of
image. It's
these
a film
ones.
Image.
It's quite small. Sorry if you're seeing it on a small screen. This is portrait. We will get a bigger one in a sec. But who's going to explain what we're looking at here?
Okay, yeah. So this basically is a previous trip that James and I did to Alaska. We were there for about 10 days. Just basically, to cut a long story short, we had £4,000 we had to spend. Otherwise, we didn't get to keep any of it. So it was part of a prize. We had £4,000, so we were in Alaska. So we were just. This was 20 years ago, when £4,000 was quite a lot of money. It's still a lot of money, but it would be equivalent of about 10,000, I would guess, today. So we're throwing money left, right, and centre, just trying to spend it, because if we don't spend it, then we lose it anyway. And one day we decided to hire a float plane and go up and do some aerial photography, and we took off and we were flying around. We're just saying to the pilot, "Oh, let's go and have a look over there. Let's go and have a look over there." And we found this amazing glacier with these blue sort of meltwater lakes on it. And so we did a couple of passes over the top of it.
And this is high. This is what Marcus isn't mentioning here. This is an altitude glacier, so it's one that's running through mountains. It's not where it's fracturing into the sea. This is up at altitude, which is why you need to go quite a long way up, basically.
Yeah, so we're doing a few passes. We're hanging out at the side of the plane and we're taking photos. Now, bear in mind, this is on film. So we can't see the results immediately. When we landed, unusually for us, we decided to get a couple of rolls processed then and there at a local lab, because usually you'd wait until you got back and use the lab that you tried and tested a million times before. But we're in an unusual situation in that we're not used to hanging out of aeroplanes. We're not used to doing this kind of photography. So we weren't confident that the exposure times that we were using were fast enough to freeze the action. Got the vibration of the plane, the wind rushing past the camera, etc.
And the plane was banking as well, wasn't it, if you remember, because the winds were below us, actually, which they're often not always on light aircraft. So he had to tilt the plane and a very tight banking. Well, you're the one with the light pilot's license. What do you call that? Banking? I don't know, whatever it is.
Yes.
In order for us to be able to see the ground. So if you were to think of the bottom of the frame here, there's actually a wing just out of shot there, basically.
Yeah, there is. But we didn't want to get back home to, at this point, it was London, develop loads of rolls of film to find that they were all suffering from motion blur. So we got a couple processed right there and then that afternoon. And when we were looking at the results, they were sharp. So technically they were good. But we suddenly realized that for somebody a viewer who wasn't aware of the situation, wasn't with us, there's nothing in this shot of known size. So to a viewer just looking at it, they wouldn't know whether it was 30 meters from the left to the right or 30 miles to the left or the right. So we discussed how to solve this problem. So the next day, rather than hire a float plane, bear in mind we were throwing money everywhere, we hired a helicopter. So we took off in a helicopter and we flew back to this glacier. So we now had a clear idea in our minds as to the photo that we wanted to take.
And to give everyone an idea of the scale's the word Mark's
was
looking for there. This glacier is approximately 100 miles long and 50 miles wide, or 200 miles long, something like that.
Yeah,
sorry,
20 years ago, James. Now it's only about a foot long.
It's nice. It's an ice cube floating in someone's G&T.
Yes, exactly. So what we did is we actually landed on. Well, we wanted to land on the glacier, but the pilot refused and said, "I'll hover a meter above it, and you can jump out." So James and I did rock, paper, scissors to decide who was staying in the helicopter to take the shot and who was jumping out onto the ice. James lost.
You say lost. Technically, it was in the days when I was still lucky enough to be able to smoke. But anyway, but I fancied a Marlboro Light, didn't I? So
yes, you did. So we hovered the helicopter right next to one of these blue meltwater lakes. If you go to the next slide there, James got out.
Heroically, you missed the word heroically because it was 60 miles an hour wind.
I'm just looking. Heroically is not on my script here. And James had a really boring, dull coloured jacket. I was wearing red, so we swapped jackets so that he had something bright to wear. And then we took off again, and basically I flew around with the pilot in the helicopter taking shots from afar. And I was saying to the pilot, go up a bit, go back a bit. And that's the beauty of shooting from a helicopter, in that with a plane, if we'd made a pass and I said, can you go up a bit? You have to fly all the way around and come back again. It takes a long time. Whereas a helicopter, you can just position it.
Well, one of the other things to say about that flying instance is when we were flying out there, the pilot, because I was sitting behind you two, I can still vividly remember it. You were in the front and I was in the back, you and the pilot. And I remember looking at the back of your slightly scruffy ape-like head. And I remember looking at the back of the pilot's head, and he had the most immaculate haircut. Everything was everything was perfectly in place, and his shirt collar was perfectly ironed. And at that point I realized that if you're going to be in a helicopter and get out of it in 70 mile an hour wind, see the numbers are going up, by the way, in 80 mile an hour wind, heroically, when he's banking it into the wind for you to jump out, you really want somebody who takes attention to detail of their own personal sort of hygiene and looks. It's I remember distinctly looking, going, he's an idiot and a bit of a gorilla. And the guy flying, actually, he really looks after himself. So he clearly wants to get back in one piece. This is a very good sign.
Yeah, so this is the camera that I was leaning out of the helicopter with. It's a panoramic medium format camera. And the beauty of this camera is that you can hand hold it as well as obviously put it on a tripod. I would say that this is probably the largest camera that exists that you can hand hold and use like a normal camera. If you go any larger than this, you're looking at mandatory tripod use. So it would be absolutely of no use whatsoever to hang out of a helicopter with. The photo, which has James in it, that's a blown up section, because the original one that we were looking at a minute ago, James is so small, you might have been struggling, especially if you're watching this on a phone. You'd be thinking, well, where is he? So that's where he is. So you can see he's got his red jacket on. That's the full frame pretty much. Go back to the full frame there, Ruth. So that's
there he is there.
Yeah, so he's just down in the lower right hand corner. Now, obviously that's not the only photo I took, but that's the one with the best sort of composition. And after we'd finished, the pilot said to me, so how well do you two guys get on? And I said, well, pretty well. Why is that? And he said, well, because if you don't like each other, he said, we can just leave him there and no one will ever find him. So that would have been quite funny to just fly. What would you have done, James, if you just seen the helicopter?
Well, I spoke to the pilot when we got back, because he also did that thing on the way back where he saves fuel and just turns the helicopter off. I'd actually forgotten that when we were talking about this earlier, only just remembered it. It's a thing called auto-rotate landing for the nerds out there. So he just turns the helicopter off and drops from altitude and then turns it on 10 seconds before landing. But he was a bit of a lunatic. And I said to him, what would have happened if you'd crashed and, or just disappeared or lost you? And he said, well, we did lose you for about 5 minutes. We just didn't tell you that. We had no idea where you were at all. And I said to him, if I fell in that water, as I jumped out of the helicopter, he said, whatever you do, don't move. Just stand exactly where you are. Do not move, because it's moving. The glacier, you can feel it moving under your feet, fracturing. And I said, well, how deep are those pools of water? And he said, oh, I don't know, a couple of kilometers or something. And I said, well, what would happen? And he said, you'd be found about sort of 10,000 years later, slightly camply, fracturing out with a fag in one hand.
Perfectly preserved.
Frozen,
scientists would be baffled at this jump backwards in evolution.
Oh, thank you, Harry. Very kind.
But just before we move on,
90-mile-an-hour winds, by the way.
Oh, it's going up and up.
Before 90 mile an hour. But before we move on, just as a note, just to show the quality of this camera. So that photo there was actually used by Fuji as a big promotional campaign, and they used it several meters wide. And when you enlarge the photo that big, you can actually see the shoelaces on James's boots in that shot.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
yeah, that's the detail that was on it, and that's handheld from a moving helicopter as well. Just obviously that requires a lot of time.
That's the only picture I have up in my house, actually, funnily enough, in the downstairs loo.
Trust you to have a photo of yourself on the wall.
Absolutely right.
Ian put an interesting comment on. Where has he gone? Ian, he says, did you decide to film your own engine failure? This is segueing very nicely into the fact that if you haven't listened to the podcast, more stories on there and lots of other discussion, ranting, I would say, possibly as well. But we recorded our first ever Photography Online podcast last month, which is going to be going to come out monthly, kind of in the same day as the show, generally. It's going to be coming out at the same time. So if you're interested in podcasts and you haven't watched it, well, you can't, obviously.
You can't watch it. You can listen to it, though. So
you can listen to it. You don't have to dedicate your entire concentration to it. Stick it on in the car, whatever. It is available all the usual places: Apple, Spotify, Amazon, all that stuff. Or if you don't have any of those, there is a direct link as well in our video description on the last show, and we'll carry on putting that on as well. So feel free to check that out if you haven't. However, we are now going to move on. Let me take you away, Ian. It was nice to see you. And we're going to add...
Who was Ian?
Ian Catchville.
Oh,
Ian,
I see.
Ian
Right, the comment, right? Yeah.
Sorry, yes.
Sorry,
Ian. Thank you, Ian, for your comment. It was just a nice segue. I wanted to use that. Anyway, we're moving on to what are we moving on to?
Big news.
Big news. So basically, every month we're going to be looking at one big photography news story. And here we go. This month, do I take in Matt in now?
Yeah, let's bring him in.
We've got Matt from Ilford. If you have watched, maybe you watched our factory tour. Ilford make film, fantastic black and white film, but also Marcus.
Yeah, well, there's technicality that Matt's going to pick you up on here because this actually isn't made by Ilford.
Oh, I apologise, Matt.
But Matt can explain why. But welcome, Matt. Introduce yourself. What's your title and role at Harman?
So my name is Matt Parry. I'm the head of marketing for Harman. So two kind of hats, as you were sort of saying, Marcus. So we look after both Ilford and all the Ilford black and white film paper chemicals, and also then Harman Photo, which is where we have our new lineup of colour films.
Yeah, so the problem you've got, Matt, is that Ilford is such an iconic brand. And if you go up to someone on the street and say, name some film companies, then they'll probably say Kodak, Fuji, and Ilford. They're the three big ones. So, but obviously Ilford, for boring licensing reasons, they can only make black and white film. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah,
so we don't have the license to use the Ilford name for colour film.
Yeah. So Ilford is just a brand that's owned by Harman Technologies.
Yeah, we're going into the boring details, people, but the Ilford name is owned by a company based in Germany, and we're licensed to use it for the black and white film paper chemicals. So obviously our origin dates back to 1879. The factory that we are based in has made film for, well, many, many years. I think since 1980, certainly in Mobley, which is near Manchester.
Yeah. So when you came out with this idea to produce a colour film, you couldn't do it under the Ilford brand, so you had to resort to using the Harman brand. So, but essentially, it's the same company. It comes out of the same building.
Harman is the original founder of the Ilford company, so it was founded by a guy called Alfred Harman. So that's where the name comes from.
Matt, I'm curious. What have you got on your jumper there?
Oh.
The other side.
It's reversed, yeah. So this is the Phoenix cassette. I think Marcus has got the real thing, or there's one here.
I was going to say, Marcus, do you have the jumper? No, that's unique.
Are these in short supply now?
Yeah, we basically got a few made just for the launch events that we were doing. So
okay.
I thought I'd stay on brand for you tonight.
We appreciate that.
Absolutely. And are you making any more of this, or is it a limited edition and once it's gone, it's gone?
It is limited edition. We have done, I think, 1 or 2 makes so far. There is a make happening at the moment. So, and I think there might be one more. And I think at that point, that'll be it.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So what's kind of, we're doing this on big news, and people who don't shoot film might be thinking, well, why is this big news? Over the last, 15 years, obviously the choice of film it has been narrowing all the time because Fuji's stopped making a lot of their color films. A lot of the other brands have disappeared, and I think you guys are, certainly the first big player to introduce something new to the market in the last, in a generation, basically.
Yeah, I think that's the significance of it is for anyone that shoots film is quite clear, because I think one of those things now with, like you said, film disappearing, people need choice. They want choice. Back in the day when we were all shooting film, it was the only medium. There was so many different options to choose from. There's plenty in black and white, but I think now for color, people have really been limited to Kodak or Kodak derivatives, so motion picture film that is also made by Kodak. So I think now having us, as a what I call a major manufacturer, being able to make film and make it consistently to hopefully what will be a high standard, then hopefully for the industry that is really good, exciting news.
Yeah, and for you to put in a year's worth of R&D, was that about right?
Yeah, it was about a year. Yeah.
And do you have any idea on how much money was involved in having to be pumped in?
Oh, I mean, it was significant. It wasn't just in terms of the film itself. We have been investing quite heavily in terms of the machinery, the kit, the equipment, but also the people. So we're investing heavily in our R&D department, because it's not just about the people we've got on board now. This is about bringing on the next generation of staff that can, learn and actually make this product or future products going forward. So, yes, Gretchen, it is available in the US, everywhere for all your usual stockists all over the country. Definitely.
Providing they haven't sold out.
Yes, I mean there are plenty still on order. I suspect it has sold out in a lot of places. I know B&H, as an example, sold out within the first few days, and they got quite a big allocation.
If anybody wants any, eBay,
Special prize, yeah.
How much
I was
are they
thinking
worth?
a nice prize, Ruth. A nice prize, but yeah.
Well, got to make some money off of it as well.
Okay, so in order for you to put in that much R&D and that much money, you're obviously seeing the demand for film and particularly in color film is there to reward all the efforts that you've put in. So what's the figures that you've got? I mean, it must be an upward trend.
Yeah, I mean, we're spending multiple millions in terms of investment. In terms of the market size, I mean, we're early into the colour film side of things. So, we think the market is bigger than black and white, as you can all probably imagine. But I think for us, it's a long-term game. We want to be in this for many years. So this investment is not just about the short term, the next 12 months. It's about the next 5 years, the next 10 years. So, we want to become, a significant player in the colour side of things, like we are in black and white.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're showing a few photos here, which were taken on, the first roll of film that I ever shot.
Yes.
So I was kind of shooting blind at the time because I think you said to me, whatever you shoot, make sure it's really big in frame and probably don't steer clear of landscape. So I basically went out and took some.
You
landscape
ignored me,
shots.
didn't you?
Yeah, I did. But yeah, it's the characteristics of the film are it's very grainy.
Yes.
Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's just a characteristic of the film. It's very contrasty as well. So you end up with, on most scenes, I would say you end up with either blocked shadows or blown highlights.
Yeah.
And what other characteristics would you say?
I think, they're the two most notable. I mean, in terms of the contrast curve, it sits on quite a steep contrast curve. And like you said, that will really kind of play into the fact that you're going to get either blocky shadows or blown highlights. It suffers from halation. You don't really have any notable examples of that, but I think if you have sort of backlit scenes, you can get halation. It's not the sharpest film, like we've said. So it's one of those, it was the way it was kind of originated. You sort of said 12 months in the making. It was a case of where the directors of the business said to our R&D team, there's no benchmark here. There's no kind of set ISO we want you to hit. There's no colours we want you to hit. Just go and see what is possible. So the team went away and started working on it, and they came back with an ISO 200 film. And I think essentially what this has given us now is a starting point as much as anything else, so that we know now how to take it to the next level. So this being our first, like we said, limited edition, the next film and the film after that will be better and better and better iterations.
Yeah. And what kind of time schedule have you got for each generation, if you like?
We're not necessarily putting time limits on it. We're fairly relaxed in that regard, but I would like to think the next generation of Phoenix will be out before the end of this year.
Okay, so I mean, yeah, so we can hope for maybe a new generation every 12 months, maybe.
Potentially. I mean, what I think I'd said before when we were chatting, I think one of the things that we're looking at is sort of 5 years and 10 years down the line. So what the R&D team are doing, they've got a whole list of ideas, like any probably manufacturer will do. And some of those ideas will take much longer to come to fruition. Some of them, like building on what we've got here. So we know how to reduce the contrast, the grain, increase sharpness, etc. So they're relatively quickish wins. But at the same time, we're looking at whole different types of technology and ways to kind of construct different layers and so on that might take 5 years, 10 years, but might make a significant leap forward in terms of quality of film. So there's kind of parallel projects going on throughout this, but I'd like to think certainly this first one will be within the next 9-12 months.
Matt,
hopefully.
just make sure, don't send any to Marcus unless you actually want images and examples posted up on social media, because this is one of the first things that
Yeah, so I have to explain that when I first got my hands on this, it was probably, I don't know, a couple of months before it was officially announced.
Yeah.
And it came in a package with a letter warning me not to mention anything about it on social media, but it said that you can tease it in certain ways. And I was away on a trip, and I didn't have the letter in front of me, and I'm shooting this film in the camera at the time. And I was thinking, I can't remember what I can and can't say. And I thought, I know what I do is I'll I'll write a post that I'm going to post on Facebook. But before I post it, I'll send it to Matt to approve. So that's what I did. And what did you say, Matt?
I think I was on holiday at the time as well. Or I was
Excuses
somewhere.
already.
I know, just getting that in there as a, you know. And I looked it in, it all looked fine to me. I'm like, yeah, go for it, Mark. Sounds great, looks great. So you posted it, didn't you?
Yeah, I posted it. And then what happened?
And then I think the next day, my colleague Michelle, back in the office, she's like, "What's going on? What's all this about? You know, this needs to be taken down." And so I think she wrote to both of us at the same time, and you're like, "No problem, I'll take it down." Meanwhile, I was getting a tongue bashing from her, sort of.
Yeah, so
I told him it was fine.
We both had to go and stand on the naughty step, didn't we?
Yes, it's my regular place at work. It's fine.
But James, have you got any questions before we?
Well, I've got some questions and an observation or two. The one thing that I really like that Matt's said that comes to mind is that, you know, and it's an obvious thing that they're developing it over a 5 to 10 year plus, basically, time frame. And I mean, when you think about it, that would make sense, because otherwise, why would you invest, you know, all your time in R&D? But I think that's very reassuring to know. Particularly that it's going to be around for you know, for a good long time into the decades. But you know, it's just a nice thing. But also, if anyone that's thinking about sort of dipping their toe, you know, because you've got to buy the gear to actually do it, to go back to film now. A lot of people don't have it left over from before. So Marcus and I both had old film cameras still kicking around, but it's a really nice thing to know that it's, you know, you've almost you're guaranteeing its future. So if you do want to go out and buy film cameras, then this film is going to be around, and that the development of it's quite nice to be on board with that. I think as a nice feel, and to develop a relationship with the current iteration of film, because a lot of people get very scared by those words, you know, grainy or sharp. You know, it might not be the sharpest. People are going, whoa, terrified, run away. Don't at all. Embrace it. That's what it's all about. Developing that relationship with the film, finding a subject matter that you like to shoot with that film that suits that particular film. I think that's a lovely, lovely thing. But there's one key question that I'm dying to ask, actually, is that whether there will be a 120 version, a medium format version, because that's where, it's all very well this 35. No offense, Matt. There's 35.
No, you're quite
we won't think it's a film. Really.
So yeah, I mean, it's probably been the question we've been asked the most.
Oh, really?
Really? Yeah, I mean, since the day it was announced, I would say kind of every 1 in 3 people has probably asked me that question. And
it's because of all these lovely cameras that are lying around just waiting to be loaded.
It is, you know, and I shoot a lot of medium format. You know, 120 has always been my preference in terms of format. So I'm crying out for this as well. So it's one of those where I can't imagine this version of Phoenix, just because we've got a lot of back orders and so on to try and get through. But I would like to think the next generation of colour film that we make, it's certainly something that I would personally hope to see. So you never know, maybe before the end of this year or early next year, I would like to think so. Can't put any guarantees on it, but
when that happens, Matt, make sure you send me some, because I've got, you know, lots of cameras like this which need to be used. But maybe how many generations do you think it will be before you can send me some to put in this camera?
I think we need something a bit better than Phoenix for that. But you know,
at least if I shoot it on this, you won't be complaining about the grain.
No, definitely not. No. So, I mean, you know, your images on that, Mark, have always been superb. But yeah, we're not quite at Velvia or Provius standard yet. But hopefully, you know.
Yeah, but you guys are the only company in the world that make film for this.
Yes.
So, you know, if it wasn't for you guys, and this is why this is so important, if it wasn't for you guys, then cameras like this would be next to useless. I mean, you can put paper in this and shoot straight to paper. But in terms of shooting to film, it's only because of your, you know, ULF program that you do once a year, where you make all these custom-sized films for all these amazing cameras that are lying around, and that's why, you know, you guys releasing this is so important. In that, you know, you're basically giving people confidence in the future of you know, the film industry. So it means that people can carry on, you know, buying and investing in film cameras with a bit more confidence that there's going to be a major manufacturer supplying what they need for it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's also probably worth saying that, you know, we are known best for making black and white film, and that is never going to change. You know, black and white is still important to us. You know, the Ilford films and papers and chemicals are you know, the key part of our business. So film is something that will kind of colour film will run alongside that really. And hopefully, you know, we can do colour film justice and start, you know, this is a beginning for us, and I hope going forward, people get behind that journey. Like we've said, this is an experimental film. You know, it's not perfect by any means, but in 12 months to achieve this is quite significant. And going forward, we hope that these will get better and better.
Well, in 12 months' time, hopefully we'll be having a very similar conversation to this, and you'll be telling us about the next generation. So we'll look forward to that.
I hope so, yeah. You obviously, Marcus, you'll know in advance, and probably have posted about it before anyone else. So
yeah, exactly. With you having approved the post.
Of course, yeah. Yeah.
Good. All right. Well, thanks for coming on the show, Matt.
Thanks for having me, everyone.
And Matt, just let us know where can people go to actually get the film?
So it's available in all the usual retailers that, you know, we stock it in. So it's available probably in about 50 to 80 countries around the world. So it's readily available. The only challenge at the moment might be that the first batch that went out might be sold out in many places, but I hope towards the end of this month, at some point next month, there will be more coming into stores.
Fabulous. Listen, Matt, thank you so much for coming in tonight. And best of luck with the R&D. Not everyone knows what that means.
Research and development.
Research and development.
Yeah,
I knew it, but not everybody knows. So thanks so much, Matt. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks, everyone.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.
So we'll continue with the show now.
We'll continue with the show now. That's your little piece of presentation in the middle there. Yeah, did very well while I pressed a button. Yeah, we're going to move on to our final feature of the night, and the one that I've been really looking forward to is Photo Detectives. Why don't you tell us what this is all about? Yeah, so basically, the idea of this is to give you guys a little bit more knowledge as to how to spot a fake image. And you might be thinking, well, why is that important? It's important because there's so many images in today's world where the photographer will either claim it's real or imply it's real by missing out key bits of information and just taking advantage of the viewer's assumption that it's a real photo. And it's wrong to do that. It's basically lying. And of course, if you want to go and change your photos and put rainbows in where they weren't in and put a massive moon in the sky when it wasn't really there, you can do whatever you want, but don't then try and claim that it's a real genuine photo, because that's just lying, and lying is wrong. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at some examples which are very obviously fake, and basically make fun of them. So if you ever do this, then do it beware. You might be featuring on the show in future. So you're right there, Morag. So let's go to the first one and we'll look at these. This is all stuff that I've just screen grabbed off of Facebook. So here, Harry, what do you reckon to that one?
I don't. What's wrong with that?
So this clearly says Northern Lights, Norway, but that didn't happen.
I know we've got at least 2 people in the comments that are watching from Norway. So let's ask them, have you ever seen the Northern Lights like that in Norway?
Okay, well, regardless of whether they've seen what's going on in the sky or not in Norway, can anybody explain to me how you get a reflection in the ice like that of something which isn't in the sky? Right, thank you. That's the answer I was looking for.
It's quite nice to see the Big Dipper. Is that actually the Big Dipper reflected in the snow there? I think it is, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's not actually in the sky, James. That's the problem. So let's move on to the next.
Romance out of everything, you really do.
Yeah. So this one here,
romance.
This and it's not the image that's the important thing here. It's the caption. That's the key thing. So the caption is stunning capture of a heart cloud formation. So that implies that it's a real event that was actually captured by a camera. But anybody with a brain will be able to look at that and go, that didn't happen. And hopefully you can look at that. You don't need us to explain why that can't happen, because you've never seen anything like that. And there's a reason why you've never seen anything like that. So the next one, Harry, especially for you, hand you over to this.
I've seen that in Africa. What are you talking about?
I've seen it in Disney.
Yeah.
So the caption here is, "This is the best elephant picture ever." Harry, can you explain why that can't happen?
Well,
Do we need this?
As someone with a zoology degree, I know for a fact that elephants can't jump. So
Well, explain why, Harry, because it's knees and elbows and ankles and stuff, isn't it?
Oh, well, we don't need to get into that.
The ears are big enough, but no, can't be done. Only on Disney.
Yeah. So let's go to the next one. Nick, what do you reckon to that one there?
I think the love is in the air.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Ruth cropped the caption off of this one, but the caption was there was a name of a beach and it was in California. So it just said, this is such and such a beach in California, because without the caption, there's nothing wrong with that, because I look at that and I think, well, that obviously didn't really happen, but it's the caption which is implying that this is a real image. And they're not saying that it's they're not saying specifically this really happened, but they're just saying this was such and such a beach in California, which therefore the viewer
adds credence to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if it said, I shot the original photo of this on this beach and I thought the wave was a bit boring, so I photoshopped a perfect heart shape into the wave, then that's perfect, because you've told us what you've done to the image. But don't leave out that information and rely on the viewer's assumption that it's going to be real. And then we've got one more for you, Harry, before we move on to the serious stuff. So, Harry, just in case you didn't notice, this is nature at its finest. It says it there, so it must be true.
Wow. I mean, I can't know.
Yeah, okay, so that's the ridiculous. So, but what we're going to do now is we're going to move on to some photos which aren't as ridiculous, and to the untrained eye, you might look at them and go, "Well, that looks real." So we're going to explain why they're not real. So, first of all, we're going to start with AI, and there's a couple of examples here. So this is AI gone wrong. So both of these photos here are basically created by prompts into a keyboard. And if we look at the left-hand one, this is apparently, according to the caption, which isn't on the screen, San Francisco. Now, if there's anybody watching from San Francisco or someone who is familiar with the city, please tell me now whether that's San Francisco, because I lived in San Francisco for 3 months and I don't recognize any of those buildings in the background, but I don't know where it is. But whether I recognize it as San Francisco or not is irrelevant. The key thing is, if we go to the, you haven't put the next, the next, doesn't matter. So the key thing is that if you look at the angle of the buildings on the right-hand side, you can see that they're all leaning to the right-hand side. And the reason that they're leaning outwards is because the camera is pointing downwards. So when you point a camera downwards, anything that's vertical, that's on the left or the right, will lean outwards. And if you point a camera upwards, anything that's on the left or the right will lean inwards. So you can see that's what's happening with the buildings in the background. But if you look at the buildings in the foreground, they're not leaning. And that's physically impossible. You can't have some buildings perfectly upright and some buildings leaning. There's perspective changing lenses. It doesn't matter. They can't do that. They can make a leaning building upright, and they can make an upright building lean, but they can't do both in the same image at the same time. So the fact that we've got these conflicting verticals going on means that image cannot physically exist. So the one on the right, well, Nick, you can talk us through this one.
Well,
we had a bit of a debate about this before we started, didn't we?
Yeah,
a bit of a Barney.
So
I mean, where's that light source coming from? Because obviously there's a building there.
Yeah, so we know it's not the sun, because unless the sun is bright enough to shine through a solid building. So we have to assume that it's a lamp, a street light.
Yeah.
Okay, so if it's a street light, why is the top of the image daylight, in that you can see a reflection of a building and a blue sky in the window there? So that's the first thing. If it is a street light, where's the bottom of the shadow being created from? Where's the look at the shadow of the cat?
Yeah, it's only got 3 legs on the shadow.
Yes.
No, the shadow of the cat's at the wrong angle to the light.
Yeah,
correct. And also, if you look at the shadow of the back leg of the cat, it's directly below the cat. Well, if that's the light source behind it, why would the shadow be there? There's so much wrong with this photo. I mean, you've got steps on the left that go nowhere. They just go to a solid wall. And this is AI that doesn't understand things like steps always need to lead to a door or somewhere, because people walk up and down them. But AI doesn't know that. And so it just analyzes photos and it recognizes steps and it just puts them in where they shouldn't be there. So the more you look at this and analyze this photo, the more you realize it's total and utter nonsense. So that was just created by someone.
We could try and recreate it, though, couldn't we? It'd be quite good fun if we've got a cat to,
Oh, come on. No cat, no animals were harmed.
Yeah, there's no way you could recreate that in a real life situation. It would just be impossible, really. So anyway, that's AI gone wrong. So Nick, tell us why these two photos can't exist.
Well, you've kind of said it in the text below it, really. there's no way that the moon can be in front of the clouds, for start.
So the left hand one there with the lady in front of the moon, there's all sorts going on with that. So even to the untrained eye, you would look at that and go, well, that's clearly not real. But the one on the right, that I think that would fool a lot of people. And they would go, oh, that's amazing photography there to get the moon perfectly between the antlers of the deer. And the reason why that is perfectly between the antlers of the deer is because it wasn't actually there when the photo was shot. And it can't be there because there's a cloudy sky. So,
we see quite a lot of these, don't we? Moons in front of clouds.
Unbelievable amounts.
We all see tons of them mainly because Marcus forwards us them in his WhatsApp, doesn't he? Because it is his pet peeve.
Yeah, go on, Harry.
Well, I was going to say there's a very well-known photographer called Peter Lick, who some people might be familiar with, who has been caught out making this mistake. And you would think a world-renowned professional photographer would sort of realize that, but I think he farms his editing out. So whoever did his editing clearly didn't take it.
Well, this is the problem, is that I can name you at least 4 world-renowned photographers, and I'm not going to because I'm not going to call them out. But Peter Lick's one of them because Harry's already name dropped that. So every time they've been caught out, and in Peter Lick's case, it had to go to NASA, and NASA proved beyond all shadow of doubt that the moon couldn't have existed in that particular place in that orientation. And once you've got NASA telling you that that's not the case, then you can't really deny it anymore. So they then go to their default excuse of, oh, well, I didn't actually process that image. I just farmed it off to somebody else, and that's what came back, and I thought it was genuine. Well, how can you think it was genuine? You're supposed to have shot the image. You would have noticed if the moon was there or not. But anyway, that's their default excuse, is that somebody else made the mistake. But yeah, you're right. So what was the comment, Nick?
I was just saying there's a couple of people in the chat talking about the San Francisco shot.
Okay, yeah.
Photo is supposed to be roughly Powell and California Street. Should have the Transamerica building. There you go. And there was another one above. It is San Francisco.
Right. Okay. No, I lived there for. I mean, it was a long time ago. So the skyline, the skyline's probably changed a lot since then. But anyway, that wasn't the reason why the photo was a fake. But let's move on to another common thing. So another way to spot fake images is when you get a focal length discrepancy. So we've got 2 examples here. Now, James, what would you say, ignoring the moon, what would you say was the focal length of both of those images roughly on a full frame camera?
The green one, or I don't know. 100.
I would say they're both
ignoring the moon. Are you asking me to ignore the moon?
Yes, I'm talking about the actual scene without the moon in it.
Without the moon. So the green one of the Northern Lights or the Aurora is, I don't know, 70 millimeters, something like that.
I would say less than that. I would say 50 max.
Just a mere correction on a 20 millimeters there. So.
No, but that's definitely wider than 70.
All right.
If you look how close.
50 and 70, but he was clearly very close to the moon when he shot it on a 70mm lens.
Exactly,
because it could have been a she, of course.
Could have been a she, but yeah, the moon and the left-hand one there is at least 300 millimeters in order to get it that big.
At least.
Yeah, I'd say 300-ish, 300 plus. But the actual base image, I would say, is 50 millimeters max. So we've got this massive discrepancy between focal length, and the same applies to
the Aurora is both in front and behind the moon in that as well.
Yes, well, that's a special effect. It's called a lunar aurora. And then the one on the right is the same story. So we've got the base image, which is shot at something around 50 millimeters, and the moon is the same size in the right hand as the left hand. So it's about 300 millimeters to get the moon that big. So both of those, we can guarantee that they're not genuine. Let's go to another one. So another keeping on the subject of the moons, another way to tell if a moon is genuine or not is on the left-hand side here. If you look at the angle of the light on the mountains, it's coming from the right-hand side. So that means the sun is somewhere over to the right-hand side out of frame, but yet the moon is being front-lit. Now that's impossible to happen because of the laws of physics. Light can't bend round corners. So if the moon had actually been there, it would have been a half moon, because it would have been lit from the right-hand side, because the sun lights the moon. The sun is lighting the mountains. As far as I know, we only have one sun in the solar system. So therefore, if the mountains are being side lit, the moon has to be being side lit because it's coming from the same light source. But the moon's being front lit. So that physically cannot happen. And then, Nick, why don't you explain the right-hand one?
Well, it's the focal length for starters, and obviously the tree's a wide-angle lens, possibly wider than 24 mil, and obviously the moon's probably a couple of 100 mil shot.
About 200 mil, yeah.
And then similar again, obviously you've got a sunset. The sun is setting, in front of the photograph, but yet the moon is being lit again.
Yeah, so although we don't know where the sun is exactly, it's somewhere below the horizon and in front of us. It's not behind us. Otherwise, you wouldn't get that orange band on the horizon. So if the moon was really there in that location, you'd see a very, very thin crescent moon, because it would have to be being lit by the sun, which is below the horizon. The only way you can get a full moon there is for the sun to be behind us. And it can be below the horizon. That's not a problem. But the sun's not behind us because of that orange tint on the horizon. So we know that that's a fake image.
So I think that's a good quick summary there when it comes to the moon, because I don't think people sort of often think about it or pay attention to where the moon is and where the sun is, etc. So you're talking about all this, and a lot of it is kind of assumed knowledge a lot of the time, which is why we're explaining it. But so the full moon is only ever going to be opposite to where the sun is setting, as a vague rough rule. Would you say that's right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we were having a conversation today. You said to me, "I've seen a full moon in the sky in the middle of the day." That's what you said.
Something like that. Thanks. Yeah.
No. But I'm just saying. So, if you assume that, then there's lots of people out there that will also
don't think about it too deeply as much as
it's impossible to have a full moon in the sky in the middle of the day, because it's only possible to get a full moon up in the sky when the sun's below the horizon, because the sun is always opposite the moon. So you can have a full moon in the sky, but it's always close to the horizon, and the sun will be opposite it. So I understand this because maybe I learned it at school.
You've got nothing better to do.
No, but maybe it's something that I learned 80 years ago at school, and you just assume that everybody else learned the same thing, and maybe they didn't. But as a photographer, you also understand it because of how light works and the way the light hits subjects. So it makes perfect sense. But just go to the next. We'll just cover the next two quickly. So there's other reasons to, or other telltale signs that things aren't real, is you get inconsistent light. So the shot on the left hand side there of the plane, you can see exactly where the light's coming from. It's coming from the right hand side because of the shadow under the wing, yet we've got light on the left hand side of the lower building there. So that's physically impossible for that to happen. And the light, the color temperature of the light is completely different. So apart from anything else, I mean, there's at least 4 telltale signs of that plane, that image, that you can guarantee it's not a real photo. The buildings are a mirror image of each other, so they've just been cloned. And the plane's way too big, because if the plane was really flying up in the sky like that, it would be about a quarter or an eighth of the size that it actually is. But we'll go to the middle one there. Again, we've got some inconsistent light. So Nick, you can explain why that is.
Yeah, well, I mean, the bottom 2/3 of the image looks like it's been lit by midday light or something. But obviously, you've got the setting sun in the distance.
Yeah, so that's from the second sun, Nick, in the sky.
Yeah, oh, you're right. Oh, well, I mean, it was Monument Valley, so
yeah, exactly. So if you go to this area in Utah, you can often get 2 suns in the sky. So that's how that one's done. And then if we go to the right hand side, this is an amazing image because we've got a solar eclipse happening. So we've got the sun and the moon on the horizon. But yeah, we've got sunlight on the water coming from that same second sun that sometimes appears magically in the sky. And then to cap it all off, just in case you thought that was a bit dodgy, we've then got some clouds behind the sun and the moon as well. So yeah, there's some good examples. And then lastly, another thing that you see is misplaced rainbows. So you might look at those photos and go, well, there's nothing wrong with that. I've seen stuff like that all the time. The way we know those rainbows weren't really there is because of the angle of the light. So we'll look at the left-hand one to start with. Look at the shadows and the way that the light's falling on the land there. The light is coming from the right-hand side. Now, a rainbow, or the center of a rainbow, if you imagine a rainbow as a full circle, because we only ever see half of a rainbow because the other half is below the horizon. But if you imagine a rainbow as a full circle, the center of that rainbow is always directly opposite the sun. That's what causes a rainbow in the first place. So it's impossible to have a rainbow or the center of the rainbow off to the right-hand side there with the light coming in from the right-hand side. The two are 90 degrees out of phase, basically. And then the same on the right-hand side. It's the same principle. The light is coming in from the left, but yet the center of the rainbow, although we can't see where it is, we can't actually see it. We know where it is because of the arc of the rainbow, is also off to the left-hand side of the picture. That's physically impossible. So if the light was really coming from that direction, the rainbow would be off to our right-hand side, not off to the left-hand side. So you can, but by knowing all of this knowledge, you can now look at photos and go, well, I know that's not real and I know that's not real, because you should question every single photo that you see. So
Marcus, also with double rainbows, and the outer rainbow is like it should be a mirror image.
Yes, correct.
The inner one. So the colours will be in the opposite order, which this one is. But this, obviously, it's true in terms of that. But you may get the odd time where someone's, shall we say, cocked up the outer rainbow.
Yeah, and there's a famous world-renowned photographer with a very, very similar name to mine. That's all I'm saying, and it wasn't Ansel Adams, who got caught out by that very fact. He'd put in a double rainbow, and it wasn't, the second rainbow wasn't inverted, and someone pointed that out, and he had to basically admit that it was a fake, having originally claimed that it was a real shot. So yeah.
So with all that knowledge now.
With all that knowledge, yeah. So we're going to look at some examples now.
And use the chat, guys. We're basically doing a true or false, real or not real. So image number 1, what do we reckon?
Do we have the answers to this, by the way?
No, we don't. So these are ones which we genuinely don't know whether they're real. Well, there's one that I know. No, actually, there's 2 that I know the answer to. But this one here, well, James, you have your input into this because I've spoken too much.
Well, I agree with that last sentence. Do you know what? I don't know, and I don't care. Is the truth.
No, but when you see that photo appear and it says, the caption says something.
Your point
Iceland.
about captioning is the all-important one, really. That's the all-important one there. So, what did it say then for this?
I don't know, but I do know that somebody is claiming that that's a real photo.
Now, I was saying before, I've seen many images from Iceland where people are up very, very close to lava. So that on its own is not enough to say that it's a fake. But a lot of people saying
wouldn't
fake.
have a lava flow like that with snow around it. The heat
exactly that
from a volcano.
That's the key thing.
I don't understand why you would fake. But I mean, Marcus and I have had this conversation until I've wanted to end it all by opening a door on an Alaskan flight or something. But I don't understand why you would bother faking that anyway.
So we've got
the only thing that makes me think it could be real is if you're going to fake it, fake the positioning of the people a bit better.
Okay, so we've got Marcus Ericsson, who's just said that he was at that volcano in 2021. But I'm assuming
he's the one in the red shirt there.
But my take on this is that there's nothing in it where you can look at it and say, it's not real, because there's no confliction of light or anything. But if you look at, so Marcus is saying because it flowed so fast. But if it's flowing so fast, why are the people standing there?
Move back. What fast?
I mean, the last word I'd say is that I suspect that whether it's AI or people faking, that those people on the left-hand side of the frame would have been not cut in half if it had been a fake. So I suspect it is real.
The reason why I suspect it's not real is because when you look at the depth of snow there, it's very, very thin in that the rocks are sticking up through it. So it's only a dusting of snow, and the heat from that lava would surely
You'd have a black line in front of the lava coming towards the people, is what you're saying, basically.
Yeah. So I mean, we don't know, but I just doubt it. It's just
Well, Marcus,
you still doubt it with someone telling you they were there.
Yes, I was on it as well. So
this is
Marcus,
the best bit of correspondence we've ever had, basically.
So Marcus, are you telling us that you were one of those people in the shot? I mean, this is very difficult to have a conversation with somebody who's on the chat window.
Well, let Marcus explain. We can move on to the next image as well. Oh, look at this.
All right. Okay. So now the truth's coming out.
Come on. Right. Let's move on. The idea of this is to stir a bit of a debate. Anyway, moving on to the next shot. So what about this one? By way of yes or no, true or false in the chat, do we reckon this one is real?
Harry, what do you reckon to that one?
Well, it's sunset. You know, we can tell from the general ambience of the photo. So full moon is possible. It's low in the sky. The shot is a telephoto image because you can't get the angle on that. I've not been there, but you can't get the angle on that statue like that from up close. So you'd have to be so unbelievably lucky to get it exactly like that. But there's no reason without planning and persistence, like your tree.
400 different apps to help you.
Yeah, you've been trying to nail an image of a tree, which you, by the way, you still haven't managed to get. Maybe you should just Photoshop your one.
So I know the answer to this, and this is a genuine photo. And the photographer, I can't remember how many years he waited for it to align like that, but there was a long article about how he got himself in the right, and he used the photographer's ephemeris to make sure he got in the right position. I mean, it's a similar scenario to the one that we were doing with the tree in front of the moon, which I'm still yet to get because it only happens twice a year, and you're relying on the light or the weather and everything else. But yeah, I mean that's a genuine photo, and everything corresponds. So you look at the focal length of the moon there is probably about 500 millimeters, maybe 600 millimeters, and everything else corresponds to that. There's no conflict of light, there's no conflict of focal length or everything. So even if you didn't know the backstory to the image, which I do, then you'd look at that and go, there's nothing about it that makes it seem fake. So we'll move on to the next one. Nick, Nick and Harry, this will be a familiar location to you.
Jesus.
So I'd want to say fake.
Well, yeah. I think
Harry, both of us have been up there with a cloud inversion, haven't we?
Well, with a cloud, yeah, but so that angle shooting it with a cloud inversion, with what appears to be some sort of sunset, or in the south to the southeast. It's not sunrise with a
no, Harry. That's the light pollution from poor tree.
Oh, of course, yeah. I do say the big city lights as I drive into Portree. So,
but I don't think, and I'm not an expert on this, but I don't think you can ever see the galactic core, the Milky Way, from Scotland.
Not this far north, no.
So that Skye definitely wasn't like that. But
I mean, it's laser beam coming out of his head as well, or he or she.
Yes,
that you can do though. I mean, you just need a strong enough torch, and
but it's not going to be as perfectly flat, is it?
No, but Harry, in order for the torch for you to be able to see the beam, it has to be shining off of something, and there's no mist or anything there. So I don't think it would ever happen. So, but there's another one for you, Harry. What do you reckon to that one?
Well, this I know is real. So I know, not personally, but I know of the photographer that shot this. He's very underrated. If I had his name off the top of my head, I would tell you.
Martin Garrett.
Yeah, I love his images. They're all shot really unusually with the polar bears like this. So it's just he spent several years building up a portfolio of images like this. It's fantastic, but it's such an unusual viewpoint and composition that you'd be hard pressed to sort of sometimes think it's a real photograph.
Yeah, I mean, think about this picture, Marcus, and the one with Christ the Redeemer. Against potentially the lava flow, but certainly the one shot on Skye of the Milky Way. The Milky Way was over processed. This is not over processed. Neither was the picture in Brazil.
Yes, correct.
So, people that fiddle around and fake things then tend to blow their cover by over processing anyway. It's not always a sign, but often is.
Yeah. So there's the last one for it. for you? I mean, Harry, you'll be the expert on this, being the zoologist.
Yeah, this is exactly what my degree was training me for. This moment.
This moment in time.
Yeah,
Go
can
on
you
then,
tell us?
Harry.
Can you tell us
Worth it.
what type of twig that is?
It's probably a birch. You know, I don't know. I've got no idea. No, in theory, I mean, you know, light matches up. You know, they've not lifted shadows honorously on it, and behavioural wise, it's completely possible. Unlikely, but not impossible. And viewers and people in the comments may remember a few years ago there was a viral photograph taken from near to where I grew up, actually in the south of England, of a green woodpecker with a weasel or a stoat riding. Was it a stoat riding on the back of it, which you know is completely bonkers, but was a true image. So and also, if this was a fake image, would you not you know, make it slightly better quality or process it slightly?
I agree with that part. I do agree with that part.
It's clearly a very, very heavy crop of some distant action. So
yeah,
you know, I would say that's a real shot.
And crows, starlings, blackbirds. What is that little bird? Whatever it is.
It's a little red-winged blackbird. It looks like.
There you go. They do mob, right? That's what they do behaviourally.
Yeah.
Okay, right. So we'll give you some more examples next month to look at, but we'll move on to another image now, which keeping on the same subject. So if we go to this this shot here, so this was a shot that I found on social media somewhere, and when I initially saw it, I thought there's nothing about it that I can say that didn't happen, but when you look at the angle of the rocket, you can see that there's a rocket in the middle and you've got two boosters on either side of it. And you can see daylight between the boosters and the rocket. So there's three things going on here, basically, in order to get that shot. You've got to be in the right position to align the moon and the rocket and yourself so that they're all in a straight line. Now, the moon's moving, well, the moon is moving because the world's rotating. So the moon's moving across the sky. The rocket's clearly moving, and you're basically trying to coincide two moving objects to coincide with each other, which can be done with some the aids of a computer program. But the thing that got me suspicious was that if that rocket had been 1 degree that way or that way, you wouldn't be able to see the perfect symmetry of the daylight between the rockets. And I just thought that to me, I smell a fish. But then I did some research. I found out who the photographer is, and he's available to join us now. He's a guy called Stephen Maddow. Stephen, are you there?
Hey, how's it going?
Very good, thank you. So you can talk us through the amount of effort and the time and the planning and everything that went into this amazing photo.
Yeah, so it was amazing. I opened up Photoshop and typed in "generate rocket" in front of the moon and shipped it. It was great.
I didn't know you guys had a sense of humor like us Brits.
But yeah, so this shot, I had actually been trying to do similar shots for a few years leading up to it. So I should have sent you guys some of the failed attempts of these as well, of the rocket not being in front of the moon, far to the side with a couple of launches leading into it. But essentially, whenever there is a launch within about, let's call it 40 minutes after the moon rises or the sun rises for that matter, there's a chance that it can line up. So it's the sort of thing where if there's not going to be any clouds blocking it, because clouds, of course, are in front of the moon and not behind the moon. So if there's not going to be any clouds blocking it, the weather looks good, maybe it's worth trying to go for it and trying to do the planning, which is something that I chose to do on this specific night. So essentially, from a planning standpoint, once I realized, okay, the moon's going to rise about 40 minutes before this rocket launch, really start with photographer's ephemeris. So I think we've got a shot of that stuff of the planning.
This one?
Yeah, that one. Of essentially trying to move it to the exact time of the launch. And then if we track those blue lines on the upper right quadrant of the screen, tracking those blue lines, the dimmer one shows where the moon will be at the time of launch. And if you look at it all the way to the coast on the right side of this image, or the east side of the image, that is historic launch pad 39A, where this rocket took off from. So that gives me at least a start of generally where I might want to think about planning this shot to take place. So that's kind of step one of like,
so once you know that, you've then got to get your position right. So obviously, you've got, this is Florida, right?
Yes, this is Florida.
Yeah. Okay, so you can position yourself, maybe 10 miles to the north or 10 miles to the south to change your angle on the launch pad to line up with the moon.
Right, exactly. So you're kind of playing with that north and south drive, and then for other reasons, you're playing with east to west as well. Of what land do you have access to? I actually have a friend who got a very similar shot who went out on a boat to try to get better access to a clear area. And where are there going to be trees? Where can you actually go where the moon's going to be high enough that you can shoot it?
Yeah. Okay.
I had some friends who tried some light trespassing to get into the right spot for this shot that night, actually.
Yeah. So once you've worked out where you're going to be, you've then got basically a moving rocket going up. So how do you know where, because rockets, in my experience, I don't know a lot about rockets other than the fact that they go up, but they don't go up perfectly, 90 degrees to the ground, do they? They go up at an angle. So how do you know where that angle's going to go?
Yeah, so there's a lot of public information and some kind of obscured public information about generally is the trajectory going towards the north? Is it just going straight out east? Is it heading south? And I like to do a lot of long exposure shots of rocket launches. If you've ever seen those shots where it's like a long streak of light with a rocket launch. And those are showing off the entire trajectory, which that's relatively easy to predict. There's a great software called flightclub.io. So huge hat tip to them that allows you to kind of simulate with all, you can put in your focal length of your lens, you can put in your location, and it will show you the trajectory. What gets really tough is when you want to then line it up, not at, 20 millimeters, but at 800 millimeters with the moon directly on that path. So then the trajectory has to be extremely locked in. And the guy behind that website does such an amazing job of locking this in. This specific launch was the first time that this specific trajectory had been flown. It was a mission for the US Space Force. There was not a whole lot of information. So I think this is the video version here. And essentially, here, we'll pull it up. But that's the end frame of it, which is also fine to get to. There we go. So here's the video playing through. And this is me running a simulation from a specific GPS coordinate that I had selected. And you can see as the launch is going along, of course, this simulation knows where the moon's going to be, and it predicts where the rocket's going to be. So you can see it's starting to curve.
So the moon's not on the horizon here, is it? It's way up in the sky.
No, it's pretty high up. And then I'm able to pause it and see it going right down the center. If we go back to the shot, we'll see it's actually not dead center. So the trajectory was extraordinarily close, but it was slightly off. Now, if it had been more off by like 200 feet, I would have completely missed it. Now, fortunately, I think that compositionally, where the rocket wound up from right to left on this image works better than right down the center, right?
Absolutely,
so kind of a nice contrasty part of the moon down that right side of the moon. And also just compositionally, like it's kind of framing itself, pointing towards the open area. I really like that. So right to left was luck, right? That was kind of like based on the trajectory. Up and down of where the rocket's placed was my choice. So effectively, right before this launch, or like 10 seconds before the shot happened, I see the rocket rising up and then hammer down into burst mode through a cable release, so I'm not adding vibration into my camera, and it just shot boom, 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 20 shots of the rocket going through the moon.
Imagine if it had started buffering just before the rocket got to the moon.
I did a great test ahead of time, and fortunately, Panasonic, who I shoot Panasonic Lumix, they just released a new camera just a few months ago that has like a 3 or 4 second buffer on their very, very high speed burst mode. So it gave me a little bit more latitude compared to the maybe 0.8 seconds that I would have had with the last gen camera.
Yeah. So presumably you got more than one image of the rocket in front of the moon, but this is the one that you just preferred the positioning of.
Yeah. I mean, this was, I would say, no question in my head, the correct placement. I've got images of right before it hit the moon, all the way through, and then just with the flame and not even the rocket on it. But this just felt like, as I was reviewing them, the correct one to select.
And we've got a video here as well. So is this playing at the moment, Ruth?
Is this the video?
Yeah, here we go. So this is your video.
Yeah, so this was at 60 frames per second. It slowed down to about 40%. So imagine it going about 2.5 times faster.
Yeah. Now, can we pause that
though? No.
Okay.
Sorry.
So no, run it again. Run it again.
Not that technical.
I think that when I watch this video, I mean, the rocket going through the moon is amazing, but I love the effect of after it's gone through. So if you've probably got a shot of it, but that once the flames disappear, that shot there as a kind of an abstract image of the moon, you'd look at that and you just go, what on earth is going on there? And it's fantastic.
Yeah, so that's a wild effect. Sorry, what was that?
Sorry, I was like, if Marcus had seen this without context and just seen that, it wouldn't.
Well, it looks like the moon has got an atmosphere on the right-hand side only, and it's like a heavily overcast day. I mean, it's absolutely phenomenal, just that shot alone.
Yeah, it's a pretty wild effect. And also the fun thing about this video, so this camera, I set out 4 different cameras that night, 3 of them shooting video and 1 stills, each about 100 feet apart. Just because I didn't know if it was going to be exactly on the trajectory that was predicted. And if you look at this, so this one was about 150 feet north. And if you look at where the rocket comes through the moon, it's actually quite a bit further to the right of the moon. So that's my still shot. And then if we pull up the video,
this video again, just play it again.
Sorry, it's going to have to play over again.
Yeah, so just keep it in your mind for a second. So now you can see the rocket approaching. And it's just a little bit further to the right from that camera. I had another camera 150 feet, 50 meters. I'll convert that 50 meters further north, and it completely missed. And I had another camera shooting video that was about 50 meters further south, and it went straight through the middle. But that one was unfortunately a little bit out of focus, so we won't talk about that.
Yeah, so basically you're doing.
Say that again, Harry.
I was just asking Stephen someone's asking in the comments, what was the focal length you were shooting that at?
Yeah, so I shoot micro 4/3. So the technical focal length was 400, but let's call it 800, 35 millimeter terms. But this is about, I forget what percentage crop, like, I don't know, about a 25% crop. So throwing out 75% of the image.
Yeah, so you're probably looking at 1,000 millimeters.
Like 2,000 millimeters.
Yeah.
And then tell us what this shot is here.
Sure, this is a fun one too. So in addition, at the exact same time that I'm shooting these 4 cameras side by side, 11 miles away from the launch pad, earlier that day, because I have credentials to be able to do this, I had set up about 4 cameras within 1,000 feet of the rocket and set them up with audio triggers to be able to wait until it gets loud. Rockets do a really good job of getting really loud and making the triggers work. And it was able to fire off this exposure as well. So this was a separate camera shooting simultaneously, which is a lot of fun.
I want to know if you hand built the rocket that's behind you personally.
This Lego model, I did assemble. And the fun thing about that one, it is 1,969 pieces. 1969, the year that this rocket first went to the moon.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for coming on and telling us the story behind your image there, Stephen. It's an amazing shot, and there's lots of comments that I've seen whizzing past as you've been talking, saying what a great shot it is. So
yeah, Stephen, have you got like a Instagram or website or socials people can go to see more of your stuff?
Yeah, so absolutely. Instagram handle, X, Facebook, all of Threads, all of those things at Stephen Matto, just my name. And then as well, StephenMatto.com. But it was really awesome being able to chat about this image with you guys. Such a pleasure to be invited on.
Thanks so much, Stephen.
And if you ever get a shot with the clouds behind the moon, make sure you send it to us and come on and tell us how you managed to get it. That'd be great.
Perfect. I'm still working out the physics on that one, so we'll see it.
Thanks, Stephen.
Cheers. Have a good
night.
one.
Man, massive thanks. He's given us faith that some of the images you see are in fact real. And there's it always seems to be a huge amount of work goes into the behind the kind of
but
stuff. But
what's changed with my personal kind of like go-to thing is that 5 years ago, 10 years ago, somewhere around there, I would always look at a photo that I knew nothing about, and my default assumption was it's real. But now, sadly, big sign of the times, I now look at all photos and go, well, that's fake. And I have to convince myself that they're real. And it's just sad that
it's a shame.
It is.
Yeah. We're going to wrap up. We're very rapidly coming up to a couple of hours. Listen, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And also, obviously, thanks to our guests, to Matt from Ilford and to Stephen as well. Harry, James, and Nick. You've done pretty well, guys, for a couple of hours. Usually, James, if you've been here before, he's got a cup of wine off to the side.
A cup of wine, a mug of wine.
He's usually got a mug because a glass is too obvious. So
Hold
usually
on,
has a mug.
Ruth, what does your mug say?
Oh, I've got to show people this. I'm not sure if you can see.
I saw you pick it up, and I just saw the word poo, and I thought, oh, she's got a themed mug for the supporters.
This was a present from someone we wouldn't mention who's standing pretty close to me. It says, "After this brew, I'm off for a poo." The classiest gift I received this Christmas, I have to say. My little nieces were going, "What does that say?" And I was having to tell them. So anyway, it's got pride of place in the back corner of one of the cupboards in the kitchen. So I thought I'd bring it out for tonight. But anyway, next month, if you want to join us again for PO Live, you can do so, but from next month you will actually have to be one of our POOs. So if you want to join the Photography Online channel as an official supporter, you can do that. This will only be available if you're logged into YouTube as a member from next month. We just wanted to make this open to everybody this month. So if you want to do that, join, go to any of the videos, press the join button underneath. It's $3.99 a month, which, let's face it, it's probably what this mug costs.
We've basically made it as affordable as possible. And to put it into context, earlier on I went onto a well-known shopping supermarket website just to see what I could get for kind of around about £4.
Well-known called Tesco.
Yeah, and I found a light bulb. So, I mean, for the price of a light bulb every month, you can basically have access to...
We'll light up your lives instead.
Exactly. Or, I mean, you could, instead of buying a Jenna palm leaf large oval platter, 44 centimetres, I don't know, James, but instead of buying that...
I think it's a soap dish.
Is it?
I think so.
Okay. Well, anyway, so you don't need...
a huge soap dish.
Yeah, 44 centimetres. It's for a really dirty person, Harry. So if you like donuts, then as you can see here, a Krispy Kreme 8 donuts is $4.95. We're £1 cheaper than that. And just think of all the weight that you're going to save by not eating 8 donuts.
Where did you find this? Come on.
Well, I thought it was on
shopping basket.
I thought it was on demographic because we got James on the team, and if you suffer from a weak bladder, then maybe look into some alternative options to solve the problem, because you can then save £4.50 on a 14 pack of sort of like pant liners, and then and another one for James as well.
Here we go. Yep.
If you're starting to go a little bit grey and you're thinking, I need to solve this problem, just go grey gracefully, and instead of spending £7.40, that's going to get you almost 2 months subscription.
You are an appalling person.
Now, Harry, does this sound attractive to you? Organic turmeric tea.
It sounds
probably very good for you.
It's probably very good for you, Ruth, but it sounds vile.
The sort of thing you would buy, Harry.
No, mine are all like just pink berry drinks,
Yeah, but instead of buying turmeric tea, you could just become a poo. So, and finally, this is the kind of thing that you would buy, Harry: a vegan pizza with barbecue jackfruit for £4. Now, given the choice of eating that or watching, this show and all the other benefits that becoming a POOS offers you, which one are you going to go for?
Yes, I mean, I do like pizza.
And why is Nick not off so lightly, by the way?
Nick, his time will come. Don't worry, James. James got the next few months to sit and cry about everything you've just said about him. But anyway, don't forget as well our big competition that was on the show last month. You've got about another week or so, I think, roughly, to enter that. It's winning a prize to the Isle of Skye for a week. in the winter, which is an absolutely fantastic prize. What else have we got? Well, you can watch this again, basically, if you want to, if you missed it. So obviously, you can't hear me right now, but this will be available for replay pretty much as soon as I press the off button. So feel free to watch it again, send it to somebody. It will be available for everyone. But as I said, from next month, that is just for our POOS. In next month's main photography online show, I had a good time, actually. I was swinging fire around my head, which I made
singed some hair.
I think I singed something. It's fantastic. Really looking forward to that.
Down the middle, did you singe though?
Down the middle, yeah, just that bit down there. Shut up. James and Harry go to the zoo, to the old homeland, which is fun as well. Marcus, you went to a lighthouse.
I did. I went to a lighthouse, and any opportunity I get to pick this off the shelf.
How many times have you picked that up tonight?
I know, but it's been relevant. So I take a shot on this camera of a lighthouse, and the shot has to be taken on this camera. It can't be done any other way, and I explain why that is in the feature.
Okay, that's the first Sunday of next month, which is the 4th of February, and also the National Park Challenge kicks off in earnest. We did have a few people commenting that there wasn't much photography going on in that first segment.
And they were right.
They were right.
There was no way around it.
We had to set it up. So it kicks off properly next month. So that is coming up. Back on this show, on our live show, which is the 3rd Sunday of every month. So that's the 18th. We're obviously going to be discussing the main show. We'll also be discussing all the gear that you will need for light painting. So that's going to be a really, really good one. And also, we want you guys to send us in an image, if possible, that we can print live during the show. So if you've got any image you think would work well in what? Is it probably
it has to be black and white, it has to convert well to black and white. So don't send us a picture with a rainbow in it or anything like that. But we're going to be printing it in a very unusual and very historical way. So we've got a little bit of a video here.
Oh, we do have a video. All right, give me a sec. Keep blabbering.
So we can show you me printing one of my own images on it, but we're going to show you how to do this basically from start to scratch. So you just have to send us the digital file. We'll make a negative from that digital file, and then once we've got the negative, we're going to then basically paint some light sensitive chemicals onto a piece of paper, and then expose it to UV light. And we can do this during the show. We just keep going backwards and forwards between this room and the studio next door. Are you looking for the play button?
I'm trying to press play.
So there we go. So if you watch this, once we've exposed it, we then develop it.
Staring at that, thinking, is it changing?
It's an instant and very, very satisfying process, and then we'll send you back the finished print. But it'll just be interesting to see the process, because not enough people print their work these days, and everybody who does print their work, they pretty much do it in the same way. So we're just showing you something that you can do yourself at home, just to give you something.
We need people's story behind the images as well, don't we?
Yes, we do. So if you've got an image that you want to send us with a good backstory, then please do that as well, because that will be part of the show.
Yeah, and that's the address there, just floating along the bottom, live@mc2photography.com. So feel free to use that.
And on the subject of sending us images, if you have any images that you see that you think, I think this is fake, but I'm not quite sure, then send it in and we'll put it into the mix.
Direct to Marcus. Leave the rest of us out of it, because he'll love them.
We'll include it in Photo Detectives on next month's show or in a future show.
Yeah. And the one last thing to say, I think, is before Ruth wraps everything up, is well done, Ruth, because that's a nightmare. Put all this together with all new software and new colours and all sorts of new banner things.
But that's why she gets paid the big bucks, James.
I know.
Yeah, that's why I get the good gifts.
Yeah, the big bucks.
Yeah, listen, don't forget as well, the podcast, if you haven't listened to that, feel free to download it or stream it, however you do it these days, Apple, Spotify, all the usuals, or of course that direct link underneath last month's video. But anyway, that's it, I reckon, from us. I'm not sure if I am off for one of these, but anyway.
Oh, nicely done, Ruth, right at the end.
Offer something to drink. Anyway, listen, thank you so much for joining us. We really, really appreciate it. Yeah, I learned that lesson from Harry. Harry, thank you so much for joining us as well. Down the bottom, Nick in the basement, over in where this is very confusing. This is why I can't use your Mamiya, because I can't do that thing. And James as well in the corner, and of course Marcus. So thanks. Have a good night or a good day wherever you are in the world, and we'll see you for our live show in a couple of weeks. Good night.
Good night.